Welcome back. Let's talk about the press. 166 years of Nigerian press. And we've been joined by the Deputy President, Nigerian Guild of Editors, and the Chairman, 21st All Nigerian Editors Conference that is taking place in the nation's capital, Abuja, Mr. Sebastian Abu. Mr. Abu, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Olumide. Thank you for having me on the program today.
Yeah, I will accept that name on behalf of my colleague Olumide, but my name is Jeffrey. But it's well done. Okay, you know, so 166 years. I think the natural question to ask, none of us have been alive that long, but you being in the leadership, I'm sure you have the history. Looking back all the way down to today, how would you assess the freedom of the press and the performance of the press?
Thank you very much. Let me start off by saying that the press has been very consistent in trying to bring stability to this country, and in also trying from the very outset since it started 160 something years ago, you know, first through the, you know, colonial era, to set the tone for conversations, and even up to the period of independence and post-colonial era. And so the press have continued to be relevant, and it has over time also for how it has continued to engage the public and also provide, set agendas for which, you know, our country has continued to evolve. So I think that the press is still relevant. The press is doing well. A number of issues that have to do with technology has also come in, which has also improved the way we have continued to engage, in which we have continued to provide content to the teeming, you know, audiences that watch and read news all over the world. So more or less I can say, you know, straight on that the press has evolved and has continued to evolve well and has continued to be relevant. Thank you.
Let's begin to, you know, look at the outcomes of yesterday's conference, the beginning of the 21st conference of the All Nigeria Editors. How significant is it that it's the first time a sitting president is attending the conference? That's on the one hand. And on the other hand, I'd like you to also speak to the appeal of Mr. President to the editors to criticize constructively and uphold Nigeria's democracy. Is that an appeal or an opinion?
Yeah, well, let me start off from the honor that the President granted us to, you know, attending the 21st conference, for which I'm privileged to chair the organizing committee. And this for us is very novel. And this also is quite appreciated. And at some point, we were already beginning to feel inconsequential that the sitting president do not find the guild worthy enough to be part of our conferences and also be part of the conversations that we push forward in terms of advancing our democracy, in terms of advancing our economy, and in terms of advancing the security and cohesion of our country. And so graciously, you know, the president, you know, attended. We remain eternally grateful for the honor he gave us. And we're also thankful to the Minister of Information and the Presidential Communication team for making this happen. Now to your second question, which has to do with the request that the president made. Well, he made his request about the need for editors and journalists as a whole to continue to report, but ensure to the nation. What we do basically as editors is to hold them accountable and nothing more. And so whatever, you know, is, you know, those in government always think about what the role of the press and particularly the editors should be is usually in their own interest. But meanwhile, the editors also have a role to play, and our role is to ensure that the government is accountable to the people that has elected it into office. And so for us, the president didn't say anything new per se, but only re-echoing what other past governments have always said about the need to collaborate with government, which is also very needful. But also what is more important that we were also able to put across the president is the fact that the landscape, the current landscape under which the press operates, it's very, very difficult, unconducive. I mean, now the economic landscape. And so we're also able to put some requests to the president, and we are happy that as a mediapreneur himself, he understands very, well what the issues are. And a number of those pertinent issues he raised, we also understand. And we are hoping going forward that these issues that, particularly the request that has been put to Mr. President, will be adhered to and will expedited so that the press can continue to remain afloat, and do its business in a manner that will be patriotic and in a manner that will continue to be sustainable.
So when we talk about press freedom, and because I try to look at the Constitution all the time, excuse me, one of the languages the Constitution uses, we must hold government account at all times. It means that at every point we don't hold government account, we're in breach of the Constitution. And that's why I started with that generic question of your appraisal of the past to the present. Do you think we're really doing enough to hold government account? Because sometimes I see citizens say, some of us are even in bed. I mean, media now, we're even in bed with the government. Where political party opposition, the National Assembly, they see it as rubber stamp. They see that's the perception. Whether it's true or false is a different matter altogether. They see institutions as compromised, whether it's judiciary and all of this. They see opposition political parties as not dependable. And then the last resort, which is the media, they also see that media is compromising. This perception is very strong in the eyes of the people. So most of the time, what you see is that the people become direct opposition to the government. In fact, it is said that the 2027 election will be between the APC and the people of Nigeria. It is their verdict. So I said all of this to ask, do you think we're doing our job the way we should do it, to the best of our ability to, gain the trust of the people that we can represent them even when our lives are in danger?
Yes, let me say that the press are not adversaries to government. We are not at all in any way. And as a matter of fact, we are partners in progress. And going back in history, we must also understand that, the press has continued to do its job and at a lot of cost. In fact, in many cases, the cost of their lives, which a lot of people, especially members of the public, do not take into account. And we must also, as we look at back in history, we'll see what and how the press have continued to project issues that has to do with living conditions of people. Fighting for the national movement that led into the independence and bringing our colonial masters, pricking their conscience about what the people expect. And also, we must also appreciate what the press is doing in terms of also balancing between what should be reported generally in public and what it is that we need to engage government with moderately so that we can continue to have a country. Information which everybody thinks that they need to have is not always is not always served easily in the manner that people think. First, you have to dig, like using your bare hands to dig through the ground. And even when you find some information, it is always important to know that information is like a floating water. If it overflows, it bursts the pipe. If it underflows, it contaminates the water. And if you need to get it in a manner that needs to be edible for the people to consume it, then it needs to be kept proportionate. And so these are some of the things that the press have been able to do constructively and responsibly over time. And I think also that are some of the things that government is demanding of us to do. But again, we have a responsibility, and we will not be cowed from doing that. We'll continue to do our jobs in the manner we feel, that is responsible. But again, we have a duty, to also be patriotic to our country, because Nigeria is a country that we all must continue to nurture, and we must continue to speak truth to power where the time comes, and to also emphasize that the press is not, an adversary to government, but rather a partner in progress.
Indeed, and you've rightly, referred to that partnership, which is critical. And we did note also that the Minister of Information was presented with an award yesterday at the conference. I'm just, trying to tie this against the backdrop of the comments made by the minister just days ahead of the conference during the ministerial press briefing that he put together, where he said no journalist has been imprisoned under this administration. And this year alone, we can count a number of journalists that have been arrested and detained. In fact, during the most recent protests, there are reports that the hashtag Free Nnamdi Kanu protest, there are reports that some journalists that were covering that protest were part of those who were arrested. I'm just wondering if this award sends a wrong signal. How strong has this partnership been with, the government under the, leadership of the Minister of Information? How much support have the media enjoyed, particularly during challenging times when journalists are arrested?
Yeah, I think also that we must also be fair to the Minister of Information, Malam Mohammed Idris. What he simply said is that at no time has government, giving directives for the journalists doing their legitimate businesses or covering news to be arrested. But we also do know that most times where you have overzealous security men who swap on these journalists and embarrass them in similar cases that you have mentioned. But again, I can tell you, whenever that is done and you call upon the minister, it's always swift to respond. And distant time, we've always seen where such individuals have been released. We have continued to engage, and we are still engaging. And it's important for you to know that the minister, despite being in government, is also, a media entrepreneur. He understands this issue very well, and so I think also that what is needed for the government to do is to continue to impress on our security men to know that just as they are there to do their jobs, the journalists are also there to do their jobs, and that the proper perimeter for doing such jobs for the security and also the press must be clearly said, so that they do not continue to use taxpayers, acquired weapons to intimidate the media. And so this is the position we have continued to press for and will continue to press for. Thank you.
Let's talk about what the government has always raised and how you feel this can be balanced. I know you mentioned it in passing. In fact, there are two issues, but let me raise just the first one. If we have time, I take on the second. And that's the issue of demarketing Nigeria's image as vis-a-vis looking at being critical of government. It has always brought this debate as to people say, oh, why do we always look at the negative side? Why don't we look at the positive side? How do we balance that to uphold national unity, national development, as against still holding on to our job, which is, our job is to look at where they don't want us to look at. That's the way I see my job. They don't want us to see something. My job is to find that thing they don't want me to see and make it public if it is in overriding public interest.
I think you have stated, what the issues very clearly. Our job is to continue to expose. Their own job is to continue to cover. But in between the two, I think also that what government requires the media to do mostly is to, serve more as a propagandist. But that is not what our jobs, are cut out for. So for us, where we are required, what we are required to do is to continue to do our jobs, particularly when you talk about exposing, our country to global ridicule. For me, we have a job to do, and our job, most importantly, is not about pleasing those in government. It's not about pleasing, anyone that feels that it needs to be pleased. But we just continue to do our jobs, and because that's their opinion, and our own opinion is to continue to hold government accountable that what they are doing wrongly, and if they feel that what we are saying, they can engage us. But I think also that trying to put pressure on government, trying to report some of these issues, is for us to get government to do the right thing and to project our country in a manner that will continue to be in right standing before the Committee of Nations. And so we are not cowed by that, neither are we continue to do the bidding of government, but rather that in doing it, again, I say we must continue to be responsible. We must continue to understand that we also have a country to build, and in doing that, we will continue to uphold the very ethics of our profession, which is to be objective at all times.
Now, the editors did make an important appeal to the federal government yesterday, and this is critical amid the challenges of media convergence, the digital age, where market share is now becoming really split. In fact, taken up by the new media and the challenges of finances. But is this message of appeal, let me just look, read out some of them: tax relief for 5 to 10 years to help media houses stabilize and meet operating costs, and VAT exemption. Is it, how strong has this made an impression on the federal government, and what assurances are you getting that indeed there'll be a headway in this appeal to the federal government? And more importantly, how will the media balance getting this with interference by the government in its work, if indeed it comes?
Well, the demands we have made are not they are not in themselves anything that is new, and it does not also in any way putting the press or the media generally at arm's way in terms of how government will influence it, but rather that these are things that are done in other climes, for instance in Canada. So it's not new. So what we are simply seeing is that given our own economic condition and how the media should operate and be sustainable, and that is why we have made this request. And we are glad and I'm happy to report that the president himself understands the issue. Like I said earlier, he himself is involved in mediapreneurship. He understands these issues. And so if we must evolve, if we must continue to survive, if we must continue to do our jobs, it is only fair that the media is considered in all of these reliefs that we are seeking. And it's nothing new. Many other countries do it. So why not Nigeria? So if you want the press to remain, viral, you want the press to continue to, to be alive to its responsibility, then there's nothing much that we're asking for that cannot be done. And we are glad that the president himself is not averse to it, and he has asked his team in the tax sector to engage with us to see how we can come to a middle ground to ensure that that is done. And you heard him very clearly yesterday that we should continue to follow up the issue and ensure that it is concluded within the shortest possible time. So we have a lot of hopes that this will be done, and we are very confident that once that is done, a lot of media organizations that are going through very difficult situations, especially their inability to pay salaries, their inability to ensure that operating costs are curtailed, will have some reliefs and be able to run seamlessly.
All right, Mr. Abu, before we let you go, we know you have a busy day ahead of you. So let's talk about 2027. I know they did mention, I think it was the governor of the Progressive Governors Forum chairman, Hopu Zodima, the governor of Imo State, that had mentioned some of the things he mentioned. He also talked about purging within the system itself. How should the media position, given what had played out? Because the narrative I perceive was the fact that perhaps he was trying to say, I stand to be corrected, because of the narrative and the reportage, we were left with a divided nation. I don't know why anybody would blame us for that. So how should we approach the 2027 election? Because it's the ground, Bukola mentioned it in passing, the real test always comes at those moments.
Yes, what the governor of Imo State, His Excellency Senator Hope Uzodinma said, he raised a lot of pertinent issues. But let me also say that the issues he raised while presenting his keynote address is a lot of them are his opinion. Because when you come to actually dealing with the issue of the press, it's always not like that. Because we have to be objective, we have to create, especially where multiple political parties are involved. And so this is what we have always done. The theme of our conference for this year is democratic governance and national cohesion, the role of the editors. And what we seek to do really is to be able to stimulate a national conversation early enough ahead of 2027 so that the gaps in 2023 elections can be quickly addressed rather than the kind of quick fix situations we have seen in the past. And so one of the things we also saw was the issue of electoral integrity and trust deficit, which is also forming a sub-theme for this conference, and what Nigerians should expect in 2027. And so these are some of the things we hope and to deal with in this conference. So we're also looking at the issue of concerns about the fact that rather than people determining, who should emerge their leaders, that it is the courts that are doing it. And we've also looked at what and why these issues, are continuing to recur in our political journey. And we are saying, look, let's begin this conversation early enough. Let's find out what are the issues, what are the problems, so that for us, our role is to continue to ensure that, that all the parties, all the stakeholders are fully engaged so that we can have a more robust, a more, platform under which people can have some confidence in our electoral process. And that is why you continue to see, low voters turnout or voter apathy in most of our elections these days.
All right, Mr. Abu. Thank you so much for coming through. Mr. Sebastian Abu is the Deputy President, Nigerian Guild of Editors, and the Chairman of the 21st All Nigerian Editors Conference. Thank you for your position. We appreciate you, sir. Oh dear, it appears the network has actually said no more. We'll take a break. When we come back after this break, we'll switch gears from politics and all that talk. We're talking sports. Nigeria against Gabon today at about 5 p.m. Nigerian time for the World Cup qualifiers. The playoff kickstarts today for us, and it's either we win or we go home. What is it going to be? We'll find out from our guest in just a moment. Stay with us.